Are you frustrated with plants that just don't thrive, no matter how much love and plant food you throw at them? The secret isn't more effort, it's smarter choices. In this video, I'll show you how to build a plant portfolio that's tailored to your space, your climate and your needs, whether that's nutritious, delicious food, encouraging wildlife or low maintenance beauty. So stop guessing and start growing with confidence. Let's find the right plants for your permaculture garden, but on purpose and not by accident. I'm Pippa Chapman and I've been designing and managing food forests for nearly 15 years. So choosing plants isn't just about what looks good at the garden centre, you know, those impulse buys. It's about knowing what your garden can grow and what you actually want from it. In this video we'll cover the 4 biggest plant selection mistakes and how you can avoid them by asking the right questions and doing some simple research. And then I'll walk you through a step-by-step process to create your own plant portfolio, starting with setting your goals, mapping your garden's conditions, looking at plant functions, and finally researching and refining your plant list. Whether you've got a tiny balcony or a large garden, this method works because it's built around your space. So let's dive in. So mistake number 1, not checking that your plants are matched to your climate. So here on top of a windy hill in West Yorkshire where it gets very cold in the winter, I would absolutely love to be able to grow hardy bananas as a perennial in my garden. Not because they produce bananas here, but just because the leaves are just so architectural and amazing. But if I grew them here, they would more than likely die in the winter because it just gets that little bit too cold for them here. And you can find your climate zone by checking online. There's all sorts of maps and databases that you can look at to check your climate zone. And quite often when you're buying plants, you can look them up online or in a book, and it will tell you what zone that plant will grow in, what extremes of temperatures that plant will grow in before you buy it. Mistake number 2 is ignoring your soil type and conditions. So many people don't check what soil type they actually have before going out to buy the plants for their garden. And actually this is a really vital step because what your soil type determines everything to do with what you will plant in your garden. So if you have a sandy free draining soil, you will need plants that will thrive in that free draining soil. Otherwise you have to keep constantly watering them all the time because they'll be always water stressed. On the other extreme, if you have a very waterlogged soil and you plant things in there that love free draining soil, they will just die, they will rot and they won't survive. So before you even think about what you might want to put in your garden, find out what your soil type is. I have a link to the video I've just done all about 3 DIY soil tests you can do at home to check your soil type. And this also includes checking within your garden, have you got any dry spots, have you got any damp spots? You know that even when you know your soil type, there will be different areas within your garden where maybe water collects a bit more, maybe you have some natural springs, or maybe you have like the end of a bed where there's a wall and that at the edge of the wall it's very free draining and it dries out quite a lot. So check for these little microclimates as well within your garden. Mistake number 3 is just buying things because you like how they look and not checking first whether or not they're going to grow in your garden. So I have to admit to buying this really lovely variegated sage. It's beautiful and yeah, it's not going to grow in my forest garden. It's just a bit too shady at the top end of my garden. It will, however, grow further down. But so many people, when I do garden consultations all the time, people say, oh, I just go to the garden centre and I buy what I like the look of without actually checking whether or not that is going to grow well in your garden. And I mean that as in sun or shade. People will plant sun-loving plants in the shade, or the opposite, they'll plant shade-loving plants in the sun. So when you go to the garden centre, if you really fall in love with a plant, before you buy it, just take time, go and have a coffee, check on your phone, do an online search. Is that plant actually suitable for the situation in which you want to plant it? Mistake number 4 is buying plants that do not actually align with the goals you have for your garden. And by that I mean, if your main goal is you're wanting to grow food crops, and actually you just keep going to the garden centre and you see really lovely flowering plants, and so actually you end up with a garden full of flowering plants. And yeah, it's fantastic to have flowering plants because they're really important for pollinating insects and also to make it a beautiful space for us to spend our time in. But actually try and find things that meet your goals. And quite often, you know, people will visit a forest garden and think, yeah, I want to copy this exact design in my own garden at home. But actually that person's forest garden was all about medicinal herbs, but actually what you wanted your forest garden at home to be about was giving you lots of berry crops so you could make jam. So don't just go out and copy someone else's garden unless that garden also aligns with the goals that you have for your garden. So now we're getting on to actually creating our plant portfolio, and as I just said in mistake number 4, actually your garden goals are really important, and so many people never stop to think, what do I actually want from my garden? What are my personal goals for my own garden? And you might think, well, it's called a food forest, obviously I'm wanting to grow food, but there's actually, even just within thinking about food itself, there's so many different types of food. So that could be growing berry crops, it could be growing perennial salads, it could be growing herbs for herbal tea. You've just no idea until you really sit down and give it proper thought and make a list, keep a journal of your ideas and your thoughts, and really try and hone in on what it is you actually want from your garden before you even start your plant list. So your priorities could be food crops, it could be medicinal herbs, it could be plants for pollinators, or berries for birds, berries for yourself, materials for crafting. There's so many different things that you might want to get from your garden. And by thinking about these things right at the beginning, it really narrows down your search when you're looking through the endless lists of plants that you might put in your garden. So once you have your goal, we're going to use this as a basis to start your plant research, to start your plant list. And now you know what your goals are, you're going to map your garden and actually find out what the conditions are. Take some time to really observe your garden. Where are the shady spots? Where are the sunny spots? Where does the soil get dry? Where does it get waterlogged in winter? Mark these down on just, it can be a really basic map. It doesn't have to be anything fancy or to scale or anything at this point. It's just about marking down the conditions, because then when you come to decide what plants you need, you can think, actually 2/3 of my garden is really sunny and 1/3 is very shady, and so you know that 2/3 of the plant list are going to be sun-loving plants and 1/3 is going to be shade-loving plants, because it's all too easy to actually just research all the plants for the conditions that you really wish that you had rather than the conditions that you actually have. So in permaculture, we really want to look at the function of a plant as well. Is it a fertility plant? Is it a plant to attract beneficial insects into the garden? Is it a ground cover that can help to suppress weeds? When you've created your wish list of your crop plants, you could start to look at actually how many of those are also a pollinator plant or a fertility plant. Something like a sea buckthorn you can use, that fixes nitrogen, but it also has a berry crop that you can eat, or the same something like comfrey, which has flowers that pollinators absolutely love, but you can also cut it and use it as a mulch. So start to see whether or not you've actually filled some of the roles and functions of these plants within the list that you've already got, and if not, maybe you need to find some other plants as well that can fulfill these functions. Finally, we're at the research phase. So this is where you're finally getting out either some books or you're doing some searches online and really start to get really nerdy about plants, which is always my favourite bit. So I use a brilliant database called Plants for a Future. It's online. It has plants suitable for a huge range of climates, right from temperate to tropical. So yeah, I would really recommend you having a play with that online. A really fantastic resource. You can tick different boxes to say, like, I've got a clay soil and it's shady and I want some medicinal plants, and it will come up with a list for you. So really fantastic resource when you're trying to build a plant list together. If you're not sure where to start, visit some local gardens near to you which will have plants that should be suited to your climate and maybe have a similar soil to you, and start to take notes. You can join a gardening club or a permaculture group nearby, ask questions, or look online. Maybe you might have a local Facebook group where you can ask gardeners questions. And, you know, just sort of Get out there, talk to people, and just start to have conversations about plants. Try and think as well about planting for things throughout the year. I've put together a plant profile template that you can use. I'll put the link in the description below. This is a free template that you can download, and it's actually part of the my food forest design workbook, which I've put together, which has the whole step-by-step process from goal setting to designing your food forest. And as part of that, I put together a plant profile sheet, and this is a sheet that has all the information that you might want to record, from height and spread of a plant, the kind of conditions and climate it grows into, which part of it is edible as well, you know, whether it's the leaves or the berries, and also what type of year that you can be harvesting each of those parts. So the main things to remember are: match the plants to your climate and soil, prioritise function over familiarity, design for your goals, not someone else's, and research smart and not hard. You have to remember that gardening is a lot about experimentation, so you can't expect to choose all the right plants first time. It's just about going into this in a more informed way, having really thought hard about your plant list and what might be suitable for your garden. Remember, the best gardens aren't built overnight, and I'd really love to hear if there are any plants that you are particularly wanting to put in your plant portfolio for your food forest.